Hello students, today's agenda is to check your homework, and today you're going to be applying quadratic equations in areas, and you will be able to do assignment 10.6. So today students will be able to find dimensions of rectangles solving quadratic equations. Okay, and so the first example is, let's say that you have a field that has an area of 55 units square, 55 square units. And one side is 6 units longer than the other. And it says how long is the shorter side. So let's say that your field, and I don't know, maybe it's to plant corn or rice or we don't know, but it's the area is equals to 55 square units, and it can be acres, it can be maybe it's a small one and it's just meters or yards, I don't know. And it says that we're comparing what I was sharing with the classes. When you have word problems, always read the problem. You know what? I actually have it written, so let me get it. So you first read the problem, then you underline keywords, then you see what information we know and what is not known. After that, you create an equation using variables to represent unknown information. And finally, we're going to solve the equation and answer the question. Okay, so those are the steps that you're going to take so that you can solve the problem. Okay, so the problem says, if a field has an area of 55 units and one side is 6 units longer than the other, how long is the shorter side? To be able to solve it, we need to underline keywords. So it has an area of 55 units. Then one side is 6 units longer than the other. So we're comparing it with the other one, which is going to be your x. Usually what you compare it with, that's your x. And how does it compare? The second one, meaning one of the sides, is 6 longer than. Longer than is more like more than, right? So if the shorter one is x, the other one is 6 longer than the one that you're comparing it with. Notice how it's in order, but I had told you before that the word than switches the order. So 6 more than or longer than the other. Okay, it switches the order. The 6 comes here first, but then in here we put it at the end. Okay, so now what information do we know? We know the area, and we don't know how long each of the sides are, but we know that they're expressions. Something that we don't know from here, but we should, I guess, we come with it from previous levels, is that the area of a rectangle is always base times height. And there are some formulas that also say the area is length times width. So both are appropriate formulas to find the area. So how can we create an equation using this information that we know and what we don't know? Well, the area is 55. So we're going to replace area by 55. The base or length is x plus 6. And the height or width is x. With this, we're going to do distributive property. And so we have 55 is equals to x times x is x squared. 6 times x is 6x. After that, we're going to subtract, because now this starts to look like a quadratic equation. But remember that to be able to solve it, this needs to be always, always, always 0. Okay, so we're going to subtract 55 from both sides. And so I get 0 on this side, and x squared plus 6x minus 55 on the other side. Now that we have it in descending order and equal to 0, we can now apply either the quadratic equation, or we can see if factoring works for this equation. And if I multiply 5 times 11, that gives me 55, but one of them has to be negative for it to be negative. And I notice that this is positive, so the bigger one will be positive, so the smaller will be negative. Now, in here, once I have these two factors, I just open my parentheses and say x minus 5 times x plus 11 should be equals to 0. Now remember that we want to solve for x so that when you multiply these two factors, that's equals to 0. And what value of x gives me this factor to be 0? Well, it has to be 5, so that 5 minus 5 is 0, or it has to be negative 11, so that when we have negative 11 plus 11, that will be 0. So these will be the values of x. However, we're talking about area, and that means distance. Distance cannot be negative, so we're going to cross this out, because then we say that it's not possible for it to be negative for distance. And so my value of x will be 5. Now that I have this value, I can answer the question. It says, how long is the shorter side? Of these two, the shorter side is x, so x is 5. So we say the shorter side is 5 units long. And again, those units, right now in here it says units, but the unit could be at meters, kilometers, miles. We don't know what the units are. It depends on how wealthy the person is and how big of land he has or she has. Okay, let's go with another one. Oh, another thing. I know the question asks how long is the shorter side, but you can figure out the longer side also by plugging in that same 5 in here and just putting 5 plus 6, that will be equals to 11. Okay, so the longer side is 11 units long. In the answer, you don't have to answer that, because it's not asking for the longer side, it's only asking for the smaller side. Okay, but you can also figure it out. Okay, let's go with another one. Okay, and then this one says, if a classroom's width is 10 feet shorter than its length and its area is 1,200 square feet, what are its dimensions? There should be a question mark in there. So again, the classroom. Okay, we read the problem, right? Now let's underline keywords. Width is 10 feet shorter than length. So we're comparing it now to the length. So that's going to be my x. The length is going to be my x. The area is 1,200 square feet. So area is equals to 1,200 square feet. Okay. And how does the width compare again? 10 feet shorter than that. There is another, the word than again. Remember that 10 feet shorter means minus 10, but then also it means that this goes at the end. So whatever the length is, minus 10. 10 feet shorter than length. Okay? That's how you would read it, kind of like going backwards. So we underlined keywords, see what information we have and what we don't have, and use variables to represent creating an equation. We'll create an equation now. Again, the formula is area is equals to, since they're using width and length, which is, again, it's the same thing, length times width. And this, it doesn't matter if I put width or length second, because multiplication is commutative, so it's okay. Do I know the area? Yes, I do. Do I know the length? Only algebraically. Do I know the width? Same thing, only as an expression, not the actual length or width of it. Then we do distributive property. 1,200 is equals to x times x. X is x squared. X times negative 10 is negative 10x. The next step to solve this equation is to cancel. Remember that we have to always have it equal to 0 to be able to solve for the x if we're factoring or if we're using the quadratic equation. So we're going to have x squared minus 10x minus 1,200. And in here, I'm going to let you think of two numbers. Or you can either pause it or just continue to see. When we were doing the actual thinking as a class, we had something like this. So if you don't know, you're like, okay, what two numbers are going to be equals to 1,200? I told them to start doing, because they gave me 12 times 100. And I say, yeah, and this one is negative, so the bigger number will be negative, right? And I said, when you multiply, it's equals to 1,200, but when you subtract, it's like negative, well, it's negative 88. So that's too big, it's not negative 10. And then I say, you can continue to grow, make this smaller because it's already, the negative is already too big. Negative 88 is too big, it's not as small as the negative 10. Then somebody said 10 times 120. And I said, well, that gives me negative 110. That makes it even bigger. So this needs to go lower. Okay, so they started giving me other numbers. So they gave me negative 80 times 15. Again, you can use a calculator. Make sure you bring a calculator, not your cell phone, to class. And this gave me, let's see, because we didn't have this, negative 65. Yes, negative 65. Then somebody gave me 24 times negative 50, which gave me negative 26. Still not there, but we're getting closer. Okay, negative 40 times 30, and that gave me negative 10. Okay, so again, it took a little thinking, but that's probably the process that we're going to have to take if we're either on exam or for the homework. What two numbers multiply equals that, but when we add them, it's equals to this. And when this is a big number and this is small, then they need to be very close together. Okay? So x plus 30 x minus 40. And so remember, the value of x is the opposite because once we have the opposite, they cancel and that makes it a 0, which makes it the multiplication equal to 0. So the opposite will be negative 30. The opposite will be positive 40. We know that we don't have negative distances. So let's see, what is it? What is the question asking? Which is my last part of solving. I already solved the equation. Now answer the question. And so what are its dimensions? So now it's asking for both the length and the width. And you can answer. The length is, and this is the length, so if we replace x is 40, so 40 and 40 what? Now we have a specific unit, so it's feet, 40 feet. Oops. Okay. And the width is, now if I plug in x is 40 minus 10, that's equals to 30. So 30 what? Is 30 feet long. Notice that for area, it says that it's square feet, but that's because it's area. But for dimensions of figures, it's only the unit with no exponent, okay? So it's only, the length is 40 feet long, the width is 30 feet long. Okay, let's go with another one. And this one says, a table's length is twice its width. Its area is 8 square feet. What are the sides? Again, it's asking for both dimensions. So we have a table and maybe chairs on the side. I'm just kidding. So a table's length is twice its width. So we know that the length is twice the width. What is this comparing with? The width. So the width is going to be my x. Okay, the area is 8 square feet. So the area is 8 square feet. And how does the length compare again? It's twice the width. Twice means double or 2 times 2. Times 2. So we're going to have the width times 2. Now, for this one, we are going to have area equals, again, length times width. The area is 8. The length is 2x. And the width is x. We multiply. And so 2x times x is 2x squared. Now, yeah, you can cancel this one to this side and use the quadratic equation or try to do factoring. And I might even do it since this video is not as long as others that are related to quadratics. Maybe I'll do it 3 different ways. So the first one that I'm going to do is canceling. I'm going to solve it by canceling. Because I noticed that I only have a coefficient in the square, so I can just divide by 2. And so x squared is equals to 4. I take the square root of both sides. And so x is equals to positive or negative 2. Okay? Why did I do this? Because I didn't have 2 different terms and I was able to cancel the 2 and then the square. So this means that my width, again, the negative can be, so it's only positive 2. And my length is twice, so 2 times 2 is equals to 4. Okay, all I did was to replace the x by the 2 that I found here, and 2 times 2 is equals to 4. 4 feet. So that's one way of solving it, by canceling. Now let me show you by, let's see if I can do it by factoring. So we have, I'm going to start from here. The area is equals to 2x, which is the width, and the length, times the width, which is x. So 8 is equals to 2x squared. I subtract 8 from both sides. Remember that for factoring, we need to have equals to 0. It's going to be 2x squared minus 8. And to be able to factor, I need to have these two become a 1. So that is going to happen by taking the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor for 2 and negative 8 is 2. The greatest common factor for the variable, we don't have a variable here, so I can't include it in here. And now I start to divide. 2x squared divided by 2, that's x squared. Negative 8 divided by 2, negative 4. And I notice that this is a perfect square. It's a difference of squares. So whenever I have difference of squares, meaning x squared minus a perfect square, I can just open parentheses and I'm going to have one positive and one negative. And the square root of 4 is 2 and 2. Okay, it's one of those special squares. And so the value of x is equals to the opposite, so that this can become 0. So the opposite will be negative 2, because negative 2 plus 2, that's 0. Or positive 2, because 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay, if you notice, I get the two same answers. Positive 2, negative 2, negative 2, positive 2. Order doesn't matter. And we will apply it the same way over here. Quadratic equation. It's the longest one, and I'm going to cover the 4 problems. Sorry about that. Hopefully you can, well, you'll have it already. So x is equals to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This is actually one of my colleagues passed it on to me. Her name is Miss Lee. So if she sees any of these videos, credit to her. I'm not sure where she got it or if she made it up, but thanks to her, I'm now giving it to my students with the song, I mean. So negative b, and I'm gonna go back to this. Maybe I should show you the whole thing. So we have the area is equals to 2x times x. 8 is equals to 2x squared, right? It's the area is equals to length times width. I multiply it. I subtract 8 from both sides. And so I have 0 is equals to 2x squared minus 8. Notice that in here, this is A and this is C. And b is equals to 0 because there is no x term. Okay, so a and c only. So x is equals to negative b, meaning negative 0, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 8, all over 2 times a, which is 2. X is equals to, when you have a 0 here, it disappears, and also this one won't affect, so it's plus minus the square root of negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64, all divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. So we have plus minus The square root of 64 is 8 divided by 4. And so it means 8 divided by 4, that's 2. Or negative 8 divided by 4, negative 2. Again, we get the same answers as in the other two examples, but by doing 3 different forms, you can choose whichever method you prefer, and you will get the same answers. And I just made my video longer. But now I need to answer in a complete sentence, okay? What is the question? Whoops. What are the sides? So we're gonna say the length is 4 feet long and the width is 2 feet long. Or should I say 2 feet wide? Not sure. Okay, so the length is 4 feet long and the width is 2 feet long. So now you can go ahead and do 11.6.